When people talk about education technology, they often talk about tools, the learning platform, the courseware system, grading software, the AI assistant. But if you step inside a modern university, you quickly notice something interesting. Learning rarely happens through a single tool. Instead, it happens through an entire ecosystem of technologies working together. And that ecosystem can be surprisingly complex. Welcome back to the EdTech Curio Cabinet. Hello again, I'm Christina, and today's Curio explores something that students rarely see directly, but instructors and institutions think about constantly: the digital infrastructure behind modern learning. Because while we often talk about individual technologies, the reality is that teaching and learning now operate within interconnected systems. And that's important because throughout the series, we've explored how education evolves, from the persistence of lectures to the challenges of scaling active learning to the role of assessment in shaping behavior. Each of those curios point to something deeper. Learning doesn't happen in isolation. It happens within systems. And increasingly, those systems are technological. Understanding that ecosystem reveals something very important about the future of education technology. In many universities today, a typical course involves several different technologies working together. A learning management system, often called an LMS, where courses are designed and organized, digital courseware providing structural practice, video platforms delivering recorded lectures, discussion tools supporting communication, assessment platforms evaluating student work, analytic systems helping instructors understand student progress, and each of these tools together serve a very specific purpose. And each tool is often developed by a different organization. From the student perspective, these systems may appear relatively seamless. You log in, you navigate your course, you complete your work. But behind the scenes, these systems must exchange data, they have to authenticate users, they synchronize course structures, they maintain privacy and security. The LTI standard, or Learning Tools Interoperability Standard, developed by organizations like IMS Global Learning Consortium, attempt to make these connections possible. In other words, what looks like a single course is actually supported by a network of internet-connected systems. It's a technology stack. It's a whole ecosystem. This pattern isn't unique to education. Many modern technologies operate within ecosystems rather than as standalone tools. Smartphones connect to app stores and developer platforms. Financial systems, they connect to banks, payment processors, and digital wallets. Healthcare systems, they integrate patient records, diagnostics, analytics tools. Technology scholar Carlos Baldwin has written about how complex systems evolved into modular ecosystems, where specialized components interact through shared standards. Education is beginning to follow a similar trajectory. Instead of a single platform doing everything, institutions increasingly rely on networks of specialized tools. This connects to something we've seen in other curios. In the episode on active learning, we saw that effective teaching often requires multiple forms of interaction: discussion, problem solving, feedback. No single tool fully supports all of those processes. And in the episode on assessment, we saw how different forms of evaluation require different types of systems, from auto-graded problems to open-ended submissions. In other words, as learning becomes more complex, the system supporting it also has to become more complex. So here's the paradox. Universities often purchase technologies individually, but they expect them to function as part of an integrated system. An instructor adopts a courseware tool. The institution implements a learning management system. Another group introduces analytics software. Each decision may make sense on its own, and each tool may be excellent in isolation. But unless those systems communicate effectively, the experience becomes fragmented. Students encounter multiple logins. Their workflows are disconnected. They have inconsistent interfaces and have to learn with different training modules. Information's duplicated. And instructors face a very different challenge. They must navigate and coordinate these systems, all while still trying to focus on teaching. The paradox is that success in educational technology increasingly depends not just on what tools can do individually, but on how well they work together collectively. And yet, the way institutions adopt technology often treats tools as independent decisions. The signal emerging from this curio is subtle but important. The future of education technology may depend less on individual tools and more on interoperability. The ability for systems to communicate seamlessly, share data securely, support consistent user experiences, and integrate into a coherent workflow. This is not just a technical problem. It's a design problem. It's an institutional problem. And increasingly, it's a strategic problem. We may begin to see greater emphasis on shared standards, platform ecosystems, integration-first design, partnerships between technology providers, because in modern learning environments, the value of a tool is not just in what it does, it's how well does it fit within the broader ecosystem. And this connects back to a recurring theme that we have in the Curio cabinet. Technology does not replace learning structures, it becomes a part of them. Now, students often experience learning through individual courses, assignments, lectures, discussions, but institutions increasingly manage learning through networks of technologies, invisible systems that support visible experiences. Understanding that ecosystem helps explain why innovation in education can sometimes feel slow or complex. And it's not just about improving a single tool. It's about coordinating many tools into something coherent. And that coordination is where much of the real work now happens. Education technology evolves quickly, but the patterns of learning change slowly. And sometimes the biggest changes aren't in the tools themselves, but in how they connect. That's why we keep the cabinet open. Thanks for exploring the EdTech Curio Cabinet.